All right. I believe we are live. Every week I do an exercise in trust with my live stream. It tells me we're live, so I always take its word for it. So hopefully I'm not just some person sitting in the living room talking to himself in front of a computer with a big bright light shining on my face. But good morning, everyone. It looks like there's 7-8 people already on. Good morning, Jim. What's going on, my man? Today's going to be good. I've prepared for this one. I'm ready for this one. I do believe it's a topic that many people here who are in the recovery and healing space. What's up, Leah? Happy to have you here. Another counselor in the house. I'm looking forward to this one because it's something that comes up on a day-to-day basis with family members in the field of addictions and recovery. And what is it that comes up on a day-to-day basis is this topic of codependency, okay? Last week I had a esteemed guest here named Siamak, who is, I call him the master of codependency. What's up, Ed? Good morning, bud. And he treats it very, very well. What's up, Hamid John? Yeah, I'm talking about coda today, man, codependency stuff. So this is going to be really helpful. Feel free to share this with anybody you want. Besad, what's up? What's up, everyone? So there is two ways that you could talk about codependency to make the idea to grasp what I'm talking about here. The first phrase is this. It's a cliche, but it's very true. It says codependency equals when loving you is killing me. Okay, when loving you is killing me, because we know that's not supposed to hurt that way. What's up, Roxanne? We know it's not supposed to hurt that way. Love's not supposed to hurt that way. But so many people in the pursuit of the love they have for their spouse, for their loved one, for their child. What's up, Trendon? I'm trying to say hi to everyone that's saying hi. Hossein John, what's up? When loving you is killing me, right? We see this all the time. If you're a family member, by the way, watching this, and your son, your grandkid, your granddaughter, your daughter, your spouse, somebody is going through the addiction process, you know you felt like you were the one going through the addiction process. Like that love was killing you. And in recovery as a family member, you got to start looking at that. And today we're going to talk about various patterns that show up in the life of the codependent. Now, also, if you're watching this and if you're like, hey, I'm just a person that struggled with alcohol, I'm just a person that struggled with drugs, I don't think I got that much codependency going on. I will tell you this, that research and statistics points to the fact that many individuals who struggle with addictions also have co-occurring codependency issues. Now, some family members might be listening to me saying, no, man, my kid's so selfish, he's not codependent. I'm telling you, a lot of people that struggle with addiction, they are so sensitive and they're so worried about how they perceive to other people. They're people pleasers. They're worried about their image. They're worried about looking cool, that they take on long before the drink or the drug codependent traits and tendencies. So Beta, Debbie, good morning, guys, or good afternoon in the East Coast for some of you. So all that being said, I want to start talking about these codependent patterns, right? And there's 5 of them we're going to talk about today. And by the way, if anybody's watching this for the first time, my name is Param. I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I'm a licensed addictions counselor. I'm also clean and sober personally for about 13 years and in a few months. So June 13th, 2008 is my sobriety date. So I have the personal experience, but that's not enough. Got the professional experience, but that's not enough. Got the educational experience. You combine all those 3 things together, and hopefully I can create a platform that can provide some really good high-end education knowledge as it relates to your recovery. So all that being said, let's get into the denial patterns of codependency. And then, by the way, if you don't know if you're a codependent or not, here's a good quick test. This is not a clinical assessment, but here's a good way to know. It says when a codependent is drowning, somebody else's life flashes before their eyes, right? And some of you are probably laughing at that, saying, yeah, till the last breath, I'm going to think about so-and-so, and we don't think about ourselves. So the denial patterns of codependency, and what do we mean by denial patterns? The same way that someone with alcoholism or with drug dependency can be in a state of denial, well, so could a codependent. And what they do is they deny at the level of their emotions. They suppress their emotions. So here are some of the patterns and traits. And by the way, if anything I say you want me to clarify a little bit more, or if you want to ask any questions, you can write them there. There's always a link. Let me just say it to some of the people that might not know. There's a link that I just put into our comment section. I do this every week with this other doctor. We go live. If you click on that link, it allows you to turn on your camera or keep your camera off, turn on your audio and come in here and talk with me directly. And if you don't want people to see your face, you can keep the camera off and you can ask any questions you want. I will gladly answer to the best of my ability. Or if you just want to pop up and say hi, feel free to. But let's get into it. So the denial patterns, the codependents often have difficulty identifying what they are feeling. Okay, so why would someone have a hard time identifying what they're feeling? And I'll tell you why. Because at some point in their life, when they were younger, a previous version of self, when they were experiencing feelings, the environment was not able to tell them, show them what they're experiencing, was not able to reinforce it for them, was not able to sit down, look them in the eye and tell them, hey, what you're feeling right now is fear. What you're feeling right now is anger. What you're feeling right now is sadness. If the environment doesn't help the individual identify what they're feeling, guess what? The human being at a young time in their life is going to have a hard time identifying what it is. They don't know. And left to its own devices, days go by, weeks go by, months go by, and a person is now an adult with codependent traits, unable to identify what they're feeling. Okay? A lot of codependents perceive themselves as completely unselfish and dedicated to the well-being of others. Okay, so when someone's a codependent, they literally have this badge of honor. They take pride in the fact that they're so selfless. They've given up all of themselves because of another person. You hear it all the time. It's almost like a martyr. They make sure that you know, by the way, how much of themselves they've sacrificed in order to help the outside situation. And when a person's in denial, they truly believe that. Like they actually believe the fact that they sacrifice themselves for the greater good. However, true codependency is just like an addiction. By doing that, by engaging in that behavior, the codependent gets a payoff. They get something out of that act. They get a dopamine rush. They feel good. They have an identity of the saver, the rescuer. It gives them a place in the world. So even though a mom or dad, and bless their heart with all good intentions, when they continue to enable their kid, they think they're doing it for the kid. They think they're doing it for the kid. They think they're doing it for the kid. On some level, they're also doing it so they can sleep well at night. So they could be okay. So their emotions can get calm. So they can feel like they're the one doing something. There's a selfish payoff that we get from codependency. In the denial patterns, we don't know that though. So now that you're sitting here listening to me and I'm telling you, if you are a codependent, and you continuously put yourself second and put other people first, it isn't some honorable act that you're doing for the world. I'm telling you, there's something that you get out of that act. And here's the thing. I promise you, in the first stage of your life, when you were first doing that, when you were first acting that way, you didn't have a choice. So many codependents become codependent when they were childs, man. You want to know why? Because maybe the home life was chaotic. Maybe the environment was chaotic and they were the eldest child and they had to take care of the rest of the kids. They didn't have a choice. You got siblings to take care of now. You have to be an adult now. You have chores to do around the house now. And this kid might be saying, I just want to be a kid. But the choice was taken away from him. Now, 40 years later, they're still doing the same thing, but now we got choices. So the next one that I have here under the denial patterns, what's up, Lynn, is so here's the thing, think they can take care of themselves without any help for others. So the irony of it is codependents in their denial patterns, they're the ones going above and beyond to help other people out, like at their own detriment, at their own health, their own sickness, their own wellness. They're going above and beyond to help other people out. However, when it comes to their own self, when it comes to their own mental health, when it comes to their own emotions, they are unable to ask for help. They believe that they not only can do it themselves, that they should do it themselves. Because guess why? At some point in their life, if they were the ones that needed the help, because they were so distracted with saving the world and helping out the rest of the family, that their needs just became secondary. Their needs became secondary. So it's that's the next one right there that I want to talk about. And also, they express, this is huge. This one's related to communication, okay? I see it all the time. This happens with a lot of you family members. I know it does. Even if I don't know specific examples, I know it does because I know codependency really well. They express negativity or aggression in indirect and passive ways. Because a codependent never wants to rock the boat, because a codependent never wants to have assertive, direct communication because it makes them feel uncomfortable, because a codependent was told at some point, hey, just do stuff, don't say stuff. Your emotions don't matter. Just figure it out. When they want to express themselves and communicate, they struggle with that. So guess how it comes out? It comes out in a passive aggressive way. It comes out in subtle ways. It comes out in less overt, obvious ways. And to the person they're trying to communicate with, they pick it up. That doesn't feel good. They don't like that. But communication is a huge one right there. So those were the ones about the denial patterns that I wanted to talk about. Now, the next one, this is huge because I believe that all codependency is rooted in low self-esteem and rooted in poor boundaries. I personally believe that. Poor boundaries and low self-esteem. And codependency isn't always, by the way, related to just family origins and moms and dads and siblings and in that unit. Codependent traits later on become a part of social groups. They later on become a part of work. I can't tell you how many people come through our treatment program because they say, hey, at work, I always felt like I was being used. I always gave, and then nobody ever gave anything back. I said yes to every single project they told me to do. I stayed late, I went early, and nobody ever appreciated me. And that just caused me to have so much stress that I ended up drinking. Or I ended up just abandoning my job, or I ended up just acting out in different places because of the stress was so much. You see, this is a person that struggles with low self-esteem, that struggles with poor boundaries, that struggles with codependency, that happened long before they started working in that job, by the way. You don't start working in a job and become a codependent. You are someone that struggles with codependency, and you start working in a job, and it creates the fuel on the fire. So then the person started drinking. So now they're at a place like Buckeye to deal with their alcohol use disorder because of their stress management was weak. However, underlying that, before the alcohol use disorder, there was low self-esteem and boundaries, which probably happened when they were, in elementary school. And that's the roots of this stuff. The roots of codependency, for all you family members that are identifying with, yeah, I know I'm a codependent, your son and daughter's addiction has nothing to do with your codependency. You were a codependent long before your kid's addiction ever came. Your kid's addiction is bringing out already what was inside of you. I'm going to try to make this one more clear. The environment can't bring out in us something that already doesn't exist in us. So if the environment becomes to a point that starts pushing our buttons, the only things that are going to turn on are buttons that already exist. So please hear that from me. Your kid's addiction has nothing to do with your codependency. Okay, hopefully we keep clearing that one up. If anybody has any questions specifically about that, please let me know, because that's something that's not reinforced enough in the recovery community. That's something that it's not a causation. Addiction doesn't cause codependency. Usually family systems long before the addiction, when the individual was younger, causes that kind of stuff. So here are the low self-esteem patterns. Codependents have a hard time making decisions. A very hard time making decisions. And it's because they're always afraid of making mistakes. Isn't that weird? They're always trying to fix things. They're always trying to be the rescuer and the fixer and the problem solver. However, inside of them, they have a hard time making decisions because they're terrified of making mistakes. Now, I'm not I joke around, I'm definitely not a rocket scientist, but if somebody's trying to fix something and make all the decisions and have all the control and be all controlling, but at the same time, underneath it all, is terrified of making mistakes and doesn't like making decisions, what kind of decisions do you think are going to come out of that person? Not good ones. Probably ones that are just rooted in fear and rooted in insecurity and rooted in doing something in a reactionary form, like forced to make a decision when their emotions are all dysregulated. Codependents are also embarrassed to receive recognition, praise, or gifts. This is something that comes with low self-esteem. I've seen this, by the way, just so you guys know, as a clinician working in groups, sometimes, we run a group that we want group participants to give each other true, authentic, sincere, genuine, positive feedback. So not fake stuff. It can't be disingenuous. It can't be, people pick that stuff up. You can't just acknowledge for somebody for something that they're not. But I've noticed people that have codependency traits and codependency, when you share with them, when you tell them, hey, I see that you're doing X, Y, and Z. I'm proud of you for doing X, Y, and Z. It's amazing to see you make so much progress. They can't even take it. You literally see them physically. You see them start looking down. You see them getting super uncomfortable. You see them breaking eye contact. And at the end of it, you say, hey, what was that like for you to receive that? They're like, oh, I couldn't even listen to that. That was too much. I felt like everyone was lying. Like, how sad is that on one level, and how powerful is that to demonstrate the strength of codependency? So they do not, here's more with low self-esteem. They do not perceive themselves as lovable or a worthwhile person. And usually that's a perfect recipe, like a perfect storm. Let's call it a storm for serious unhealthy relationships to start happening. Because if somebody believes that they're not worth loving, if somebody believes that they're not a worthwhile person, what kind of relationships is that person going to get into? Ones that will reinforce that same belief. If someone feels like they're not lovable, guess what? They're going to get in a relationship with somebody that's not going to love them. If they feel like they're not a worthwhile person, they're going to get in a relationship with somebody that's going to make them feel like they're worthless, right? And again, this happens long before the addiction process, my friends. This is something that comes up all the time with low self-esteem patterns. Need to appear to be right in the eyes of others and may even lie to look good. So low self-esteem and just exaggeration has to do with just being so uncomfortable with who you are that you have to show your best foot forward. You have to show yourself that you're competent, you're right. And if you can't, you won't say anything at all. And sometimes people have to lie, and this is all to be liked. So we call this people pleasing. Codependents are master people pleasers. You know, in the program, you'll hear about you'll probably remember your sons and daughters can be like chameleons. They can be who they need to be, say what they need to say, do what they have to do, to manipulate, to influence, to all that kind of stuff. But guess what? Underneath all that, they're not doing it just for the drugs. You know why they're doing it? They're doing it because they want to feel loved. They want to feel accepted. They want to feel connected to other people. The other thing with codependency and low self-esteem, this one goes hand in hand. I talked about it, but I need to make sure I reiterate it, is having trouble setting healthy priorities and boundaries. So all of you people that are watching this right now, I know there's about 15 of you that have been watching this for almost like a year and a half now. You are starting to hear me say certain things about boundaries. You're starting to hear me say certain things about prioritizing yourself, your health, right? This is all the kryptonite to codependency. A codependent that sets boundaries eventually starts to become stronger and healthy. A codependent that starts to prioritize themselves, because the whole time, guess what? You prioritize the world. So prioritize yourself, you'll start to feel healthy. And when you do, you'll be able to see these patterns in yourself. I promise you this. If any family member has an example of this, have you ever noticed once you start to recover a little bit from your codependency and your codependent traits, whenever you relapse and fall back into it, you're able to actually step back and see it. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm acting out of fear. I'm acting out in codependency. I'm trying to be liked. I'm trying not to ruffle the feathers. I'm trying not to make things worse. I'm suppressing my own emotions. I'm not communicating well. It's coming out passive aggressively. Once you know it, once you know what recovery tastes like, you'll know the symptomology a lot better. This is really powerful stuff, you know, because at first, before recovery, you get exposed to recovery. You don't know what you don't know. How are you supposed to know if you're acting out in codependent traits if you've never even heard about it? Because before all this, right, every mom and dad I ever talked to, they say, hey, I'm just doing it out of love for my kid. I just don't know what else to do. So I enable them. I give them what they need. I do what they want because I don't want them to die. And I'm just afraid. And I'm going. So before you get exposed to this information, it's okay. Because why? You're doing the best that you know how to do with the information that you have. And I'll never knock anybody for that. You know, who am I to say if somebody's trying their best, that their best isn't good enough? No. If you're trying your best out of love and you don't know any different, that's wonderful that you did that. However, once you know different, once you know better, and you continue to do the same, That's not on your kid's addiction anymore. That's on you, the family member in your recovery. Because once you get exposed to the information, like, this is what I need to do if I want to heal myself, if I want to help my kid. This is what I need to do. The moment you choose not to do that, it has nothing to do with the kid's addiction. It has to do with you and the choice that you made to get back into codependent traits, enabling traits, to keep the cycle of addiction alive. You chose to breathe life into addiction in that moment. Has nothing to do with any treatment program, nothing to do with any your addiction, your kid's addiction, with your kid themselves. It has to do with you. And so compliance patterns, these are, we got a few more of these, but the compliance patterns of codependence. So these are things that you see patterns in many codependents. They are completely loyal. So they're extremely loyal, remaining in harmful situations too long. Okay, so where would we see something like this? A family member who stays in the enabling role, the codependent role, for one too many days, one too many years, one too many decades. Like, that's how loyal they are. That's how committed they are to this codependency thing and this identity they have. I've also seen it, and we know, and this is sad, but people that are in abusive relationships. When loving you is killing me. There's movies on this stuff, right? There's books written on this stuff. When loving you is killing me. When someone stays in an abusive relationship out of codependency for too long, that's a sign of the compliance patterns. They compromise their own values and integrity to avoid rejection or anger. Like, that's how compliant they get. They just say, like, I'm suppress everything about myself, my values, my morals, because I want to reject. I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to feel rejection. I don't want to feel like I screwed up. I had a parent here that talked on us a few months ago. We had this daughter and her mom come up here. Super wonderful. She's a coworker. She's a friend. The mom's been involved in the recovery process for so long now, 3+ years. And the mom was saying that before I sent my daughter to rehab, I was driving around all of the pawn shops in our area to help get back the things my daughter pawned. And I also took her to some places that they were able to get drugs. This is a mom and like a young daughter. The mom's never seen a drug in her life, is driving around her daughter to places that she can pick up dope, heroin, because she was going to be dope sick. Now, when we're talking about they compromise their own values, their own integrity to avoid rejection, anger, sadness, feelings, all that kind of stuff, that's compliance. It drills it down. Codependency did that, right? And some people might say, well, hey, what else is a mom supposed to do? Man, I'm telling you, there's they didn't know any better at that time. She wouldn't do that now. Thankfully the daughter's been sober for 3 years, but at the time, that's all she knew. And that's like, if that isn't active codependency, I don't know what is. Like when someone's in active addiction, it's so obvious. They're nodding out. They smell like alcohol. They're all cracked out on some stimulant. You could tell when you look at someone on drugs, you could just tell. When you look at a mom or a dad or a grandparent that's acting out in codependency, that's driving around in the middle of the night in really dangerous neighborhoods to help the kid get some drugs because the kid's dope sick, that looks just as overt, just as obvious as a heroin addict that's nodding out off heroin. That mom or dad behind the wheel driving around in the middle of the night in some really dangerous neighborhoods looks just as sick as that kid does, right? It's just one has substance in it, one doesn't. They put aside their own interests in order to do what others want. No self, just, hey, I'll go with the flow. You know what they are? Codependents in their purest form. They're kind of like, you ever see the movie American Beauty? At the very end of it, there's this plastic sandwich bag. And it's actually a really cool scene, but it just kind of like, it floats in the air and floats in the air and floats in the air. And it just goes wherever the wind takes it. It's kind of like a codependent. And sometimes they end up in destinations they don't like. And they say, God, how did I get here? Why am I here again? Well, you just went with the flow. And if you don't have a plan for yourself of where you're headed, you're going to end up there. Hi, Khaleh. Hi, Monijan. What's up, guys? They are afraid to express their beliefs, opinions, and feelings when they differ from those or others. So they stay so compliant to the neighborhood, to the surroundings, that even when they have a thought or a belief that goes against what everyone else is saying, they just sit on it. because they don't want to ruffle the feathers. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to cause any more disruption, any more chaos. And again, why would somebody be afraid to express their thoughts and beliefs? Because at some point in their life, maybe they weren't allowed to. Maybe if they did, they were disciplined. Maybe if they did, they were told to shut up. Maybe they said that your word doesn't matter. Now, if that happens to somebody at a little age, do you think all of a sudden they grow up and say, you know what, from now on, I'm going to be assertive. From now on, I'm going to speak my mind and have opposing views with everybody and stand firm in that? No, they get in a setting, and even if they don't like what's happening around them, they don't say anything. This happened, by the way, last year when everything was politicized. There was a situation that someone brought to me at our facility. Some people were having a conversation on the side outside of the group while they were smoking and stuff. They were having a conversation that was not rooted in any type of compassion. It was actually, it alienated some people. It was disrespectful. And the person was standing there and just couldn't say anything. And thank God the person was able to come to me and say, hey, do I have a few minutes to speak with you? There's something that just happened that I'm having a hard time with, and was able to share with me what happened. So I did a little coaching and a little work with him in that moment. And I said, what prevented you from saying something in that moment? And he said, I just didn't want to, I don't know. And he didn't have an answer. And when he spoke to me, he was so assertive and well-spoken and articulate and had so many strong beliefs and ideas. And it was just so refreshing to see that he had that in him. But in the moment when he was around those people, he was afraid to express any of that. You know, and I said, how often have you done this? And he said, my whole life. My whole life, I just sit back and don't say anything, and I don't want to rock the boat. And this person's sitting there with those feelings of like being hurt, being marginalized, being disrespected. So, you know, I went out there with him and we kind of did a little adult coaching and made sure that other people knew that words matter. Words do matter. And, you know, whether those people learn that lesson or not, probably not. You know, I'm pretty sure that they'll be around smoking in a circle somewhere else, continuing the same damn conversation. But the person that came to me and talked and advocated on his own behalf and had someone else go for maybe the first time, stand up for him and share my own personal beliefs on the matter that they had and give them a platform to also talk. We're still in contact, me and that person. And that was over a year ago. So, so the next one that we have here for compliant patterns, they accept sexual attention when they want love. So they find sexual attention, connection, intimacy as a form of a byproduct of getting the love that they want, like as a kind of a medium to get there, a vehicle to get there. But how often do they get in that vehicle hoping to find love, but it's not actually there? And then they get in the cycle of feeling used. It happens all the time. They get in the cycle of feeling used. And last one, the same thing, give up their truth to gain the approval of others. So they become people pleasers, man. So the next one we have here is these ones you'll see. So family members, listen, if you didn't listen to anything I've said so far, listen to this next part. It's the control patterns of codependency. Now, as a clinician that's worked over a decade in the field, as someone that is passionate about the addiction recovery space, I will tell you this, that family members experience these patterns the most out of anyone that I'm talking about, okay? And here's why. Why would somebody need to control something? Because real or perceived, it is out of control. So when something is out of control, a person tries to overcompensate with control. So you think you're doing what needs to be done in the situation, but what happens 9 out of 10 times, it backfires and makes it even more out of control, right? So here are the control patterns of codependence. Number 1, believe people are incapable of taking care of themselves, right? Believe people are incapable of taking care of themselves. I can't tell you how many family members I've seen that they did things for their kid for so long because they literally thought the kid can't do it on their own. Like they carried the individual for so long because they thought the kid can't walk, if you will. And now the kid becomes a young adult, an adult, 25, 30, 35 years old, and is unable to do things for themselves. And the family says, well, I don't get it. I don't get why they can't do it. Well, did you do everything for them for an extended period of their life? And they're like, yes. How do you expect they'll ever learn? Right? How do you expect they'll ever learn? And again, they do it out of love, by the way. They do it out of love. They don't know any different. But here's the thing. If you don't allow somebody to walk, right? Let's just use a very simple example. If you don't allow someone to walk and you just carry them, eventually that person loses the ability to use their muscles to stand up straight, to walk, to move, and all that kind of stuff. You cripple them. We can actually cripple people out of love. How about that? Psychologically, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So not only can people take care of themselves, I always tell family members this: if you've done all these things for your kid for a while, let them do it on their own. Let them try on their own. And the kid tries in the beginning, there's some failures, there's some ups and downs, this and that. But eventually they learn how to crawl, they learn how to walk, they learn how to speed walk, jog, run. And the parents looking back saying, how the heck is he doing all this? Well, when you give people the opportunity to grow up, guess what? Maybe they grow up. Right? Maybe they grow up. When you give people the respect of what they're capable of, even if they're not capable of it right now, even if you know your kid can't pay his own bills right now, say, you know what, pay your bills and figure it out. And just see what happens. And it might not be right away. It's not a flip of a switch. I'm not saying go ahead and do that like immediately. Come up with a plan and do that. It's a powerful thing. They attempt to convince others what to think, do, or feel. Talk about power of control patterns of codependence. Jim just named off a few things over there. I'm just going to put this up because there's some importance to this. He said, family members can start with a phone bill, car insurance, food, gas, rent, or gas. Obviously not all of those at once, but there are various different ways to start incorporating that into life. So if a family member is paying all those things and you're wondering why your kid's not self-sufficient, well, there's the main thing for you. And you want to always start with, a smaller one. That's usually the case. So you don't want to start with their rent. You start with the smaller ones. And you say, you know what, as of this month, I will no longer be paying your phone bill. And Jim's in a group all the time. Jim does group facilitation at Buckeye. He's been in the field for he's been sober for 17 years, been in the field for a while. How many times, Jim, do we get guys in group that are saying, yeah, I couldn't actually go out and spend some money here, or I had to save my paycheck when it came in because my parents don't pay my phone bill anymore and I have to pay the phone bill. So guess what they do? They adjust and they adapt. When they realize that someone's not paying the phone bill, for example, they figure out a way to adjust their life and adjust their spending to make sure they pay their phone bill, because guess what? These kids love their phones. They love their phones. They love the internet that comes with the phone. It's like their lifeline to life. It's very rare to someone say, I'm going to go phoneless this day and age. Some family members have a hard time with that one because they say, what if they don't pay the phone bill and I can't get a hold of them? If you have an anxiety about that, well, keep paying the phone bill. Get rid of another thing. Get rid of another expense that you've been paying, right? Allow them to work on themselves. So, and start small incremental steps. You never want to overwhelm somebody and just say, I'm pulling this expense right here all at once. If you've been paying it this whole damn time, another month of strategic exit plan isn't going to kill you, right? So the next one we have here is they freely offer advice and direction without being asked. That's a form of control. Like if you're on the phone with your kid and your kid's talking about an issue with you and they didn't ask you for your guidance, for your support, for your help, they're just venting. And all of a sudden you start to problem solve for them and fix stuff for them and give them solutions and all that kind of stuff. And you give them all this advice. It's a form of codependent control. Like if you're always giving people advice without anybody asking it, you got to really look into that. It was like, why am I doing that? Why am I trying to fix something again? Why am I trying to fix someone again? So whenever it's like, one of the things that I learned to do professionally, but I always ask people, are you open to any feedback, suggestions, guidance on what we just talked about? If they say no, good enough. None of my business, right? And let's see what we got here. Here's a family member that's owning up to some of their own codependency. I never gave my qualifier a chance to experience life himself out of so-called love, and not wanting him to go through the similar difficulties I went through with life. What a disease I had. So very big of you, Jose and John. I'll tell people what this means because it's a very powerful statement. This person, let's just say they had a hard upbringing or childhood. And this happens a lot with people, by the way, that have hard childhoods and then they succeed in life. what they forget is the reason why they succeeded was because of that childhood, was because of the difficulties and challenges they went through. It built character, adversity, resiliency. So what happens is when those people become successful, what they want to do is protect their child, protect their loved one from going through any of that struggle that they went through. So they shield them. They provide for them. They do things for them. All the things that they always wanted but never had, they make sure that that happens in the life of their loved one. Now, what happens in that moment is this. Now the loved one is not going through the same process of growth that they went through. Right? You get and it's all out of love, like he said. He said so-called love. And at the time it was love. Maybe right now you look back at it and say, hey, God, I was doing it out of, X, Y, and Z. At the time you were doing it was out of love. So you can't be too hard on yourself either, though. That's another thing. Codependents have a hard time practicing compassion towards themselves. But yeah, thank you for that. It's a very, very powerful thing to say. We need to hear these every few weeks. Yeah, Pita, we do. I need to say these every few weeks because Siamak always talked about how a counselor or therapist is like a licensed codependent. So I had codependency in my repertoire of skills long before I picked up a drink or a drug. That's like straight up. I was very all these things I'm talking about, I'm also talking about firsthand experience. So they become resentful when others decline their help or reject their advice. So not only do they give advice freely without being asked, when the person doesn't accept their advice or rejects it or just says, who asked you anyways, they become resentful. How vicious of a cycle is that? That's like setting yourself up for just expectation and then of the environment doing something and then getting resentful when it doesn't meet your expectations. They have to feel needed in order to have relationships with others. Family members, man, I'm telling you, this happens so often. So the dance between the person struggling with addictions and the codependents is one of rescuing, saving, enabling, helping. The identity of the caregiver becomes putting out fires, putting out the consequences, dealing with the legal stuff, dealing with the financial stuff, dealing with the doctor stuff, dealing with the therapy stuff, dealing with the insurance stuff. And then when the person gets help, gets in a safe environment, gets in the path of recovery, the codependent sitting at home saying, what do I do now? For years, all I did was try to focus on my kid, and now my kid's doing better. Now, what do I do about myself? And then that's when that hits them. Like, oh, I just realized I've neglected myself for a long, long time. And they don't feel needed anymore. They don't feel needed anymore. And that's a whole, we're talking about lifespan development, by the way. So there's a time that the parent, like they know they're needed because without them, the child can't survive. Like when a child's young, infant, toddler, young child, pre-adolescent, adolescent, that kid's not going to survive without the parent. Then all of a sudden the parent starts becoming their own and the child starts becoming their own person. And like, I don't need you. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to. And the parent starts thinking like, oh my gosh, I'm not as needed anymore. So addiction allows for the parent to stay in that same role of being needed by something or someone. And when the recovery happens, that's why we call it the empty bird nest or whatever it is that they call when kids go away for college, the parents sitting at home saying, oh my God, what do I do now? This happens in rehabs too. When a child goes away to treatment, the parent is in that same phenomenon state. They use blame and shame to exploit others emotionally. This is the vicious part of codependency. I don't look at codependents as these like super, Mother Teresa type people. I look at codependents as they have a vicious side because once shit hits the fan, once all the things go bad and it goes awry and it goes, the wrong direction, all of a sudden a true codependent is going to make you know what they have done for you. A true codependent is going to rub it in your face about how much they sacrificed, about what they gave up for you. I've seen this happen in various cultures with like immigration and stuff like that. I've seen it with the Iranians, but I've seen it with it doesn't matter. Whenever there's like an immigrant child, right? And there's an immigrant child and the family really struggled to come to the United States, right? And they've given up their home, their land, and their whatever, and they're over here and they're working, in jobs that are sub their education. They're not living the previous life they had. As soon as the child, like the adolescent kid, gets in trouble one time, or smokes a little pot, or gets little behavior stuff, or starts dating somebody that he shouldn't date, she shouldn't date, the family says, don't you know what we've done for you? We gave up our whole life for you. We left everything we had, all our friends, just for you to have a better chance of life, a better opportunity for life. And this is what you do for us. It's like, oh man. And guess what? That doesn't stop. That just keeps going and going and going. And then they wonder why the kids are resentful towards them. You know, I've had so many kids, the immigrant children say, well, why the hell did you bring me here in the first place? Like, I would have been fine over it. I would have known the difference. And it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. Let's see what Teresa said here, because she's been watching these a little bit. So she said, you taught me so well to back off and stop trying to help my son. 167 days sober. Congratulations, Teresa. That's really, really cool. When he really didn't need it, if I start again, he says, now, Mom, what did Parm say? I'm good. Oh, yeah, we're conditioned. So they got to the point that when the mom gets into codependent mode, the kid jokes around and is able to say, Mom, what did Parm say about that? So this is recovery. It's a common language of recovery. I'm really glad that you, I don't know, I taught you, I guess, to back off, but I kind of just said, hey, put yourself first and let your kid have the space, the emotional space, the physical space to flourish and grow and see what happens. At least you can experiment it. You can see if backing off and stepping away works, because if you never tried it before, how would you know? And it seems like so far it's working, but keep doubling down now in your own recovery. Always got to make sure you put yourself first, regardless of the recovery time. And yeah, Besad here said so true. He identified with, I'm assuming, being an immigrant coming to the United States and that kind of stuff. So it's all over. And it's not just with Iranians. I want you guys to know that happens with all different cultures and ethnicities and backgrounds. The parents make sure the kid knows that they sacrificed for them at the first sign of trouble. So let's see. Okay. So then the avoidance, this is the last one. Sorry, the avoidance patterns. I was reading something. This is the other things that codependents do. So they judge harshly what others think, say, or do. So, people that judge other people, right? I'm telling you this, they do it all the time. Now, it's not always like judging people in a negative way. Sometimes you could judge people on the positive way. So you either see someone better than or less than somebody. But judgment, codependents tend to judge a lot, and that's again, when you're dealing with low self-esteem, it's easy to look at other people to feel better about yourself. But what do they say in the program? When you have one finger pointed at somebody, you have three fingers pointed back at yourself. Always remember that when you're pointing a finger at somebody, you should always remember that you got three fingers pointing back at yourself. It's a really important thing to remember. The other thing that they do with the avoidance patterns is they allow addictions to people, places, and things to distract them from achieving intimacy in relationships. So how many families have I come across as a marriage and family therapist that they're lacking intimacy in their relationships? Like whether it's the spouse, the two partners with each other, whether it's the family member with the other children. And you want to know why? They use the addiction that's happening around them as the reason why they don't have intimacy. So they avoid working on themselves, their life, their relationships, because they're so hyper-focused on the addictions. And then when the addiction goes off and does whatever, the family unit just falls apart because the only thing that was holding them together was the addiction of a loved one. And how sad is that? Because there is more to it. There's so much more to it, but you got to explore it. Again, they use indirect and invasive communication to avoid conflict or confrontation. They just kind of like hint at things without just talking about it. Remember this, my friends. Please remember this. It is more people appreciate direct, honest communication. Like people like to be told directly what it is. People don't like when you talk around an issue. Just say it. Just say it directly. Just rip the Band-Aid off. People appreciate that. We actually understand difficult things like that. Think about it. When you're at a doctor's office, right? And the doctor comes down and wants to give you some news, good or bad, do they start like dancing around and beating around it? They just tell you directly because that's how human beings appreciate getting information. So obviously you're not a doctor. Well, you might be a doctor, but you're not doing, medical work with your kid and you're not breaking any news, but always talk directly. There's no need to kind of make life is already confusing enough to add like riddles into communication. That's kind of one thing I like doing with you guys. I talk very directly to you. I don't beat around the bush or talk about little, dances and stuff like that. So the other things with avoidance patterns, I'll just give you two more. They pull people toward them, but when others get close, they push them away. So this is kind of, they tell people to come this way, but at the same time, they're going this way. And it puts somebody in a really weird spot, because you're kind of like, do you come forward or do you not come forward? Because why? They're just afraid of letting people in. They don't want people with codependency don't want other people to see how weak and broken they are. And I'm not saying weak as a person. I mean, like, life has drained them, because they have what? They have the image of everything's put together. I got this. No, you don't. So in order for people not to see this, you can't let them come in. Because if you go spend 48 hours, I mean, you guys all know, for the family members watching this, in the midst of your kid's addiction, right? Like in the grips of it, when it's like really bad and you're not sleeping at night and you're just a mess. If somebody came and spent 72 hours with you, what would they see about you that they don't see in the outside world? Right? Because you don't put that on when you go out there. Nobody's going to go, to work experiencing, acting out the ways they're acting at home. But if somebody followed you around for 72 hours with a camera on you, what would they see that you're not showing the world? And that's what's inside of a codependent. So those were the things that, my mom right here, she wrote something. She wrote, I have worked on my codependency for many years now, but I need to work more, because right now, as a codependent mom, I like to tell you right now, maybe you need to drink. Yeah. So me and my mom got this joke that every time I talk for a long period of time. And she's always concerned, like, she'll send me like a text message on my phone that says, Param, make sure you drink some water. Make your voice is, you need some water, so you're gonna get thirsty. I'm like, Mom, I'm like 37 years old. At this point, if I made it this far in life without drinking water when I speak, I think I'm gonna be okay. So she's very concerned right now that I'm gonna die of dehydration, and that I'm gonna become sick. So I will tell you this, Mom, I will see you tomorrow, so you can have a big glass of water ready with ice in it. And if I make it till tomorrow, I'll make sure I drink that glass of water at your house. So, oh man, I'm out of stuff when I'm just cracking jokes with my mom on a public forum. So all that being said, today we talked about codependency. This is a very important talk, my friends, very important talk, because if you're a family member watching this, you either currently are experiencing codependency. You can't give Eileen's coming. The moms and the maternal instincts are coming to support each other. She came and said, give mom a little leeway. I will. Me and my mom are really cool, I promise. But she's supporting. And we got over here, Jose's coming in. Now you know what we parents go through. Yep, he's worried about his son drinking some water right now, I'm sure. No, I get it. I understand this. And Jim, you're welcome, bud. But the reason why this one was important, is because whether you're going through addictions right now, or you come from a family system, maybe not even your own, like when you were growing up, that was dysfunctional, there are patterns and signs and symptoms of codependency that you live on a day-to-day basis with. Now, the reason why it's important to identify them first and then address them is because if you don't, codependency starts looking like an addiction. It has the same consequences of substance addictions. It'll start impacting your health. It'll start impacting your wealth. It'll start impacting your peace of mind. It'll start impacting your relationships. It'll start impacting the way you feel about yourself, the way you feel about the world. It'll start impacting your outlook. It'll make you anxious. It'll make you depressed, right? So deal with it. It's just as important as dealing with addictions. All that being said, I look forward to being here same time, same place next week. I will. And thank you so much for the time and that you spent with me here this week and every other week, man. It's one of my favorite things to do in the whole world. Love and appreciate all of you. I will see you next week. Have a wonderful time. Thank you.